I'd actually been planning to discuss Professor Miyoshi's critical intervention in afterlives of area studies, which to an extent has necessarily been ignored in the field of Asian studies, I think, because of its critical point of view. But actually, I was reading over my old notes from Professor Miyoshi's seminars, and I realized that a lot of what I want to talk about is not going to be really organized into one focused talk about area studies. Rather, I just want to go over some of the main points that I think are still germane to our discussion of the humanities today, which come out of my class notes. So sorry, it's a little bit of disorganized, but that's what I want to do today. So today I really just want to focus on some of the pressing issues that were raised by Professor Miyoshi in the seminar, and they're really connected to what Professor Sanchez was just talking about, the university and the economy and the connection between the two and how they're changing. So before I just get into some of the themes that have been ringing in my head from the seminar that I took with Professor Miyoshi, I just wanted to read quickly from his syllabus just to give everyone a sense of what it was like actually to take his course and some of the radical ways in which he was rethinking teaching actually. So this is directly from his syllabus. I am not interested at this stage in receiving a term paper generated by busy work. Rather, I would like to see you take time thinking and imagining seriously what's wrong or good with our society. Is the university simply a part of the marketplace where we make our living? If yes, should we continue to do what we have been doing? If not, where can we begin to change? What are the questions that urgently demand an answer? What is the state of our consumerism? Is academicism a part of this consumer culture? Why aren't we talking with each other more openly, instead of exchanging pre-approved and exclusive codes? What should or can we be doing? I would like contributions to these questions in nearly any imaginable form. So this is what it was like to actually have a course with Professor Miyoshi, and it was a pretty amazing experience. And I think some of the talks earlier have given a sense of what it was really like to have contact with Professor Miyoshi, not just be a student, but be in his presence really as somebody influenced by his ideas. And so I'm just going to start discussing these themes that still come up in my head as I try to approach my own work. And the first thing he really laid out in the class is that hope for the sake of hope is dangerous. We should not just always look for hope in the professional endeavor of trying to search for hope. That's a kind of worthless task. And if things are bleak, we need to admit they're bleak, because that's the only way we're going to get to any kind of solution or free thinking about this. So it is not our job to locate resistance or to celebrate survival as resistance or to celebrate resistance as opposition. It's just our job to connect the dots, really, and to think really openly about how things are connected in ways that we haven't really seen before, if possible. So that's one of the main things that I came away from his class learning. Another was that this idea that the university is slowly becoming more limited, or rapidly becoming more limited in creating a space for critical discussion, is somewhat of a romanticization of the past of the university. And Professor Sanchez mentioned this too. The university has never been just this free space of open critical inquiry. So we should really avoid mythologizing the past of the university if we're going to get a real understanding of how it can serve our purposes at the present. And he also mentioned the point that none of the major intellectuals of the 19th century were actually employed at universities. So this is a major point that he wanted to make. And just that our expectations of the humanities may be overblown, considering the history of the institution itself. So we were reading a lot of Cardinal Newman in this class, actually, and Cardinal Newman was really interested in the purpose of education, or the mission of education, ultimately, as connected to some kind of virtuous religious calling. And it was a direction that I was kind of curious about going in such a seemingly secular course. But anyway, this is the direction that we were going in. And really the idea that virtue ceased to be part of the gentleman's training when religiosity was eliminated from educational training. So this is just something, I don't know how to digest this myself, but just something I really came away struggling with taking his course. He also just clearly laid out how defense, agriculture, and finance had redefined the mission of the university. So I think just taking a historical look at the evolution of the university from the 19th century on, we can get a clear sense of these three areas of influence, defense, agriculture, and finance, and how it's really been full participant in achieving these state goals, kind of. So then we talked about the massification of education in the 60s and really the origins of the UC system and how Clark Kerr had developed this notion of a multiversity in the sense that basically the next generation of managers for the mass production industrial society would be trained at universities like UC San Diego. And he didn't just want to take that as something we should oppose uncritically, but really thinking once university education takes that form, is academic excellence as a concept still possible? And is academic excellence as a concept elitist in itself, or is such a concept survivable in a context like a mass education society? Anyway, we were really thinking about how open or exclusive education can be and how this redefines the purpose of education in a lot of ways. So another thing that we discussed was really the relationship between the nation and humanities, really. And Professor Miyoshi really made the point that the irrelevance of the nation and the national culture in this globalizing era really was the essential reason for the end of humanities, in a sense, because humanities really needed the anchor of the national culture to make itself a valuable category or unit of analysis in kind of the university. So, so what are we left with at the university was really the question. And Professor Miyoshi kind of jokingly would say, this is where we study how students learn to show up. Students learn how to be to class on time. And beyond that, there's not a lot of training that goes on. It was really his kind of, his very sarcastic point of view. I don't know if I want to go in that direction too much, but anyway, he really saw it seriously as a place to study changes in labor practices and how the youth engage with labor differently over time and things like that. So the evolution of relations of exchange and production can be viewed actually at the university despite the content issues. So there was an increasing awareness that the university system, as it had developed, at least in the Clark Kerr kind of mode of the multiversity, was no longer sustainable or able to reproduce itself in its current form. And as universities became more corporatized and focused on maximizing revenue and income and minimizing costs, there was really something lost in the exchange of ideas, in a sense. And I think this is also what Professor Sanchez was kind of mentioning, the new online universities, the change in the way knowledge is being kind of disseminated and packaged for consumption. And yeah, I guess we were really talking about the brand name of the university and how the really commodification of the brand name university degree had gone so far from the space of free exchange and open ideas kind of mode of teaching that we talked about older modes of teaching where students would actually just pay the teachers directly for the knowledge they received in older times, and how this may be, somewhat of a model for the direction to go in, if at all. Anyway, I'm not sure if that's feasible or not, but just taking all the middlemen out of the process in some sense. And there's so many now. But anyway, we talked about how producing intellectual property really became the ultimate mission of the university rather than disseminating some kind of information. And we talked about the delusion of statistical exactitude and how this really contributes to the high valuation of intellectual property, in a sense, and also the way professors avoid subversion. And this was really, it's a theme that's come out throughout today, but professors protect themselves, they protect their departments, they protect their colleagues, and they protect the university. And in turn, the university really protects the idea of the nation or the state in a way that is deeply connected. So these are all things that weren't fully developed for this paper at all, but I was just thinking really about these ideas